I called my daughter after her surgery, and her husband said she is resting. I heard her coughing in the background. I was already driving before he finished the sentence. I spent 31 years in a corner of a room with a notebook, making sure the record reflected what was actually said rather than what people later claimed they had said. Those are two very different documents. I know what a managed version of events sounds like. I know where it lives, in the pause that is a half second too long, in the detail that is one detail too many. My name is Reginald Okafor, retired family court administrator, Victoria, British Columbia. Not a judge, not a lawyer, the person in the corner with the notebook. Walk past me on Government Street in my old wax jacket with the collar that never did lie flat, and you would ask me for directions before you would ask me for a professional reference. That assessment is generous to me. My daughter Simone was 34 last November when she had her gallbladder removed at Victoria General. Routine procedure, 45 minutes. The surgeon said home within a day with the confidence of a man whose own gallbladder had never caused him any difficulty. My wife Dorothea and I sat in the waiting room for 2.5 hours because Simone's blood pressure had dipped and they wanted to monitor it. We drank the vending machine coffee and did not say anything about being scared, which is how we have handled every frightening thing in 38 years of marriage. Side by side. Quiet. With terrible coffee. Comment your location. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Simone's husband Scott was there. 38 years old. Commercial real estate leasing downtown. The thing I had been trying to name about him for 6 years had never quite come into focus until Simone's birthday dinner the previous spring, when someone asked him how his father was doing, and Scott said, "Great. Really great. Dad's wonderful." All before the question was finished. Small thing. I mentioned it to Dorothea on the drive home. She said I was looking for problems. She was not entirely wrong. We saw Simone that evening in recovery, pale and groggy, and she reached for my hand before she said a word, the way she has done since she was 4 years old. I stayed an hour. We agreed she needed rest. Scott walked us to the elevator and said he would have her call in the morning. She did not call in the morning. Scott did, at 9:14, and said she was sleeping it off, sore but well. Surgeon pleased. I said I would love to speak with her when she woke. He said absolutely. By 2 in the afternoon I had not heard from her. I called. Scott answered her phone. She had drifted off again after lunch, he said, and he did not want to disturb her. I said I understood rest. He laughed in the way people laugh when they want you to feel unreasonable for having said the true thing. He said she would call before dinner. She did not call before dinner. Dorothea said I was spiraling. I poured a glass of wine, sat through 11 minutes of the hockey game, turned it off. That evening I called Gerald Whitmore. Gerald has been my closest friend since we were 19, sharing a dormitory bathroom at the University of Victoria that smelled like mildew and other people's shampoo. He runs a small accounting firm in Sanish now, and he has an accountant's relationship with the truth, methodical and not interested in rounding anything up. The man also has a quality I have relied on for 42 years. He will say the thing I have not yet let myself say. I told him about every call, meaning all the ones that had not happened. He was quiet. Then he said, "Reg, that is not what a person resting looks like from the outside. That is what a person being managed looks like." I said, "I know." He said, "Do you want company?" I said, "Let me try once more first." I did not sleep well. I got up at 5 in the morning and made tea I did not drink and sat at the kitchen table looking at nothing for a long time. I called at 11 the next morning. Scott answered and said she was resting comfortably, good breakfast, incision site looking clean. He said it all in one breath, evenly, and then underneath his voice I heard it, a cough. Small and careful, the sound of someone trying hard not to be noticed. Scott did not pause. He said the doctor had recommended minimal stimulation, said he was keeping things calm for her. I said, "Scott, I can hear her." 1 second of silence. Then he said, "Oh, she is just clearing her throat. She sends her love." I said, "Of course she does. Tell her I will see her very soon." I hung up. I was in my coat and out the door before I had made any deliberate decision. The drive from Fairfield to Gordon Head is 22 minutes. I made it in 17. I am not going to account for every light. I knocked at 11:49. I know because I checked my watch while I waited. Scott opened the door and his face went through several things at once and landed on pleasant with visible effort. He said, "Reg, what a surprise, she is just about to nap." I said I will sit with her while she does. He stood in the doorway a moment longer than was natural. I have 31 years of practice waiting for people to move. He stepped back. What I saw when I walked into that bedroom was not what a person who had been told she was resting comfortably would expect to see. The glass of water on the nightstand was fine. The painkiller still sealed in its blister pack beside it, untouched since morning, was not. Her phone was not on the nightstand. It was not on the dresser. It was not visible anywhere in that room. Simone looked at me with the expression of someone who has stopped expecting the thing they are hoping for, and then there I was. She said, "Dad, you came." I said, "Of course I came, sweetheart." She said, "I kept wanting to call you." I pulled the chair from the corner of the room to her side of the bed and sat down in a way I intended to be permanent. Scott appeared in the doorway once and said something about rest, and I nodded at him, and he eventually went to the kitchen. I heard the tap running for a long time. I spent 2 hours with her. I handed her the painkiller, refilled the water, let her talk when she was ready. Scott had managed her phone from the morning after surgery, telling her she should not tire herself, replying to her friends in her name, handling her surgeon follow-up calls himself. He had framed all of it as care. It had the shape of care. That was the difficult part. He had also asked her twice in those 3 days whether she wanted to consolidate their accounts. Easier to manage the bills, he said, while she was unwell. The second time he asked was that same morning, when she had been awake since 4, with incision pain and had not eaten since the evening before. She had not said yes. She had not had the energy to say no with any force either. I understood, sitting there, that this was not accidental timing. I said very little to Scott on the way out. He was trying to read me. I have never found it useful to resolve that uncertainty for people. I called Gerald from the car. He listened and then said, "Reg, you need someone who does this professionally." He was right. The next morning I called Margaret So, a family law attorney on Fort Street whose name I had seen on the right side of several difficult cases over the years. Her office had plants on every windowsill, actual thriving ones, and she had the stillness of someone who has been the calmest person in a very large number of rooms where things were going badly. She listened to all of it without interrupting once. When I finished, she named what it was, legally and precisely, and she said Simone's next steps were Simone's to decide. My role was documentation and presence. I visited Simone 3 more times that week, writing down the time each visit and what I observed. On the 4th visit, she had her phone back. She had asked Scott for it. She said he had been quiet for the rest of that day. I should tell you that what I learned later was that Scott had been in financial difficulty in the months before the surgery, a property deal that had not closed the way he expected. He was not a monster. He was a man who had looked at a problem and decided to move while no one was watching. That is not an excuse, it is an explanation. I think explanations matter. 3 weeks after the surgery, Simone was on her feet. She went through her own call records herself, without me suggesting it, and saw the pattern clearly. She called me, and she was calm in the way that means someone has moved from hurt to decided. She met with Margaret 5 weeks after the surgery, came out of that office with her coat on straight, and said, "Let us go get lunch." The formal separation notice reached Scott 61 days after surgery. Margaret's filing documented the communication pattern and the financial approach and its timing, supported by my written record, Simone's call log, and statements from her friend Daisy and from Dorothea. Scott's counsel tried. The joint account did not happen. Simone's finances stayed her own. The house had been in her name before the marriage. Scott moved to a furnished rental near Tillicum in February. He sent 2 messages after the filing. Margaret reviewed them and said they did not require a response. Simone said good. That was essentially that. Simone came for dinner last month. Dorothea made the roast chicken she has been making since 1987, preserved lemon and garlic and herbs from the pot by the back door. Gerald came. His wife Pauline came with wine that was considerably better than anything I would have chosen. We sat at the table well past 3 hours. At some point I looked over, and Simone was laughing at something Gerald was saying. Head back, completely open, the laugh that is just itself and nothing else. I had not heard that laugh since before the surgery. Maybe longer. Dorothea was watching me watch her. She refilled my glass without making a thing of it. I said, "I am glad she is all right." Dorothea said, "Reg, she was always going to be all right." She said it the way she says things she has known for a long time, and has been patiently waiting for me to arrive at. Outside the kitchen window, Mrs. Abernethy's dog had stopped at our fence the way he always does on his evening walk. Nose to the bottom rail, perfectly committed to whatever he smells there. Simone noticed him and laughed again, smaller, just for herself. That small private one, just for the dog at the fence, was the one that got me. I told Dorothea the chicken was perfect. She said she was aware,